Thank you for the introduction and hi everybody. My name is Caroline Das-Monfrais. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer EMEA at FTI Consulting, and I also run a very exciting program called the FTI Resilience Barometer. What I would like to do today is give you some of the insights from a survey which was just released a few days ago and which really helps bring to life some of the issues all of you are facing when it comes to project management and getting things done in a disrupted world. Every year, every quarter, we survey about 2,500 large companies in the world across the G20. We talk to the C-suite, we talk to board members, we talk to senior business leaders who are driving change and making things happen in their countries and across all industries. It's not a surprise that COVID is the #1 issue at the moment. Everyone's talking about it, everyone's worried about it, but what does it really mean in terms of business, in terms of project management, in terms of change in the world? I was quite surprised actually when the results came back because our definition of resilience is basically preparedness and risk. So we look at the risks, we look at the impact of those risks, and then we look at how businesses are prepared to address those risks, not just today, but looking ahead. And it was really striking to see that 40% of G20 businesses think that they will survive if a vaccine is developed, but if a vaccine is not developed quite quickly, they think that they have a year or less. And it's also really interesting to think about what happens next, because COVID, we hope at some point will be a thing of the past, but business models are changing, consumers are changing, and it's not a case of things going back to the way they were. We really have to think about the new normal. And you will see here on the slides, over 3/4 of G20 businesses believe that their business models must fundamentally change as a result of the pandemic. And that's not just organizational structure, that's everything. Go to market, the way we engage with our customers, the way we make strategic decisions, the way we invest, the way we manage our workforce. So some pretty phenomenal insights here. And what I thought we could do is maybe dig a little deeper and have a think about what that means in terms of you, your roles, the impact you have on your markets and industries. So what are the C-suite concerns for this quarter and for the year ahead? 80% of business leaders across the G20 think that unemployment will continue to rise. 65% are concerned by the potential for increasing corruption. Fighting financial crime is a big C-suite concern at the moment, and that's here to stay. 88% believe further waves of coronavirus will occur. We're not out of the woods yet. And we're not just talking about the human cost here. We're also talking about the cost to our economies, to our industries, and to the many companies many of you will be working with. So it's impacting corporate debt, it's impacting employment, it's impacting our lives, and that's going to take a long time to fix. So how does the world bounce back then? What's the angle here? What can businesses do about this? What we find in our survey is that crisis is something that's becoming more important, not in terms of the kind of the external events, but the way we prepare for them. Many businesses are creating crisis preparedness functions, and we are seeing leading organizations that also build crisis management and crisis response as part of kind of key project management skills. So the idea here is that you start working on a piece of work, you start with an exam question, here's the problem I want to fix, or here's the KPI I want to get to. Actually being prepared for change, being prepared for disruption, being agile, and using data, so using evidence to make decisions is going to be very important going forward. What that means effectively is that people are prepared for a world where things don't go according to plan. So you start with a set of objectives, but you constantly go back to the drawing board and think, am I answering the right questions? Has anything changed? If I'm trying to get to that outcome, am I really setting the pieces in motion to get to that result? And the answer might change. It might change depending on coronavirus. It might change depending on the shape of the economy that business is operating in. And it might also change based on regulation or something that gets uncovered in the process. So businesses that are leaders in resilience are businesses that are agile. They are evidence-led. They use data to make decisions. They really think about what we call the resilience journey, which is to protect, adapt, and compete. So they protect in the short term, they adapt to new realities, but they also keep an eye on the long term. How do I stay competitive? How do I ensure that I am delivering the right results, not just for today, but also for tomorrow? And resilience is built at every level in the economy. And that is not just a business issue, it's also something that is impacted by the interaction between countries. A very concerning fact from our survey result is that nation-state cyber attacks, for example, have a big impact on business. 60% of CEOs on the planet are worried about potential cyber attacks that come not just from kind of loose actors in the ecosystem, but nation states. And that has very tangible impacts on loss of customer data or intellectual property. It's something that's not just between governments, it's something that can impact a business, but it's also something that can impact the way you manage or deliver a project if you are dealing with sensitive data. We also know that the welfare of individuals is really important, and that's something which we've been talking about for a long time. It's the concept of personal resilience. And I think all of you will recognize that in today's world, it's just incredibly hard to switch off. It's 24/7, everything is connected, so many synergies around, and we have constant waves of disruption impacting the portfolios of projects we manage. It's really hard to keep kind of personal resilience in place at three levels. One level is leadership. Leaders are really rethinking the concept of personal resilience. What does it mean to be resilient, not just for yourself, but also for your organization? And how do you lead by example? Then being resilient as a project manager or as a team leader, how do you ensure that your team is safe and delivering, not just from a performance standpoint, but also from a mental health standpoint? And then the last one is individuals, making sure that the resilience is not just at the organizational or leadership level, but each individual, based on their personal circumstances, are equipped with the tools and the data to make the right decisions and stay high performing in the long term. So what's in front of you here is something we call the resilience agenda. We've integrated all these insights from these companies from all sectors and really questioned the so what. So, what can you do about it? Yes, being resilient is important, and we want to be agile, and we want to use data to make informed decisions in real time. But where do you start? So we've created the model in front of you, which basically has 7 levers of resilience. So if you go across the wheel, there are 7 areas where we can increase preparedness, but also have a greater visibility around some of the risks that are facing business today. It might be that all 7 levers are relevant to you in your role today. It might be that only 1 or 2 are relevant in for your current project or for your industry. But ultimately, you will, in the course of your career, come across each of the 7. And so if I may, I'll give you a quick overview of the 7 levers of resilience, and I will give you the latest data from our Q4 survey to bring this to life. So if we look at digital trust and ecosystem, and that's the point I was making around cybersecurity earlier, cybersecurity is not something that is only a headache for your general counsel or for your IT department. 75% of company boards now have cybersecurity as a regular item in board discussions. Cybersecurity can destroy, a cyber attack can destroy a company. It can destroy value. It can make the share price tank. It's something that's not just theoretical. It's something that we face in projects every day. And that's more acute in a COVID environment where so many of us are working from home. If we look at operational and financial resilience, we find that obviously cash flow and the ability to invest are being impacted at the moment. 60% of the companies we surveyed have expressed some concerns around their ability to service debt and some of the challenges around that. Some assets are now cheaper, and so it's likely that M&A activity will resume soon. Many of the corporates have cash, and so all the disruption in the market will probably lead to some major acquisitions, to consolidation, and to a change in the landscape for many industries, especially for the industries that have been badly impacted by COVID: tourism, hospitality, construction, transport. If we look at business model and workforce transformation, then I think it's really a phenomenal point in time in terms of business history. We are all working from home. We are all using new tools to collaborate and solve problems. We have confidential data in the cloud. We have people working as contractors and freelancers who will not go back to employment in the way we had a few days before. The business model concept is changing, and it's changing because of digital as well. So it's not just COVID. COVID has accelerated some of the trends, but actually digitization is accelerating as a result of the pandemic, and it's unlikely that things will go back to the way they were. We now look at economic impact and sustainability. Again, very striking fact: 85% of the large companies we surveyed said that they're using COVID as an opportunity to materially enhance their approach to ESG and sustainability issues. What does that mean? Well, if a company had a long-term strategy around sustainability, they might have used the opportunity of COVID to accelerate that strategy. They could have disposed of a non-performing asset in their portfolio. They could have used the the company value, the market cap, being reduced in one area to maybe go and try and acquire that particular asset. We're seeing a lot of change in that space, and the change we're seeing as well is cultural. And I think that again that is a trend that is accelerating. So if we look at ESG, the S in ESG has become more important. We have seen that with Black Lives Matter. We have seen that with some of the riots in the States and various other people going out and saying this is not good enough. Business needs to do more. We need to have better, relationships with our stakeholders. We need to think about the impact on, profit, people, planet. And that again is something that is becoming more important and more strategic on the agenda. Government and stakeholder relations: 79% of companies are under extreme or significant pressure to strengthen their relationships with stakeholders over the next year. That is intrinsically linked with regulatory issues, because of what's happening in the world right now. There is more scrutiny. People demand answers. They want to know. They want more transparency. And it's going to be really interesting to see how resilience evolves in the coming year in the context of regulation. And that again is something that we see across the piece, but it is more targeted in specific industries like TMT and financial services. And then lastly, I will give you some worrying insights around the climate for doing business at the moment. We are seeing a very sharp rise in disputes, contract disputes, use of force majeure, and it looks like the trend is going to continue. So we think that there are going to be more litigations, more disputes, more issues around contracts in the coming year, with a severe impact on supply chains. And then lastly, going back to the point around crisis, most businesses have agreed that no one could have, we all know that no one could have prepared for a global pandemic. But even if you look at the standard level of preparedness for crisis management, many businesses did not have the right contingency plans in place. They didn't have the skills and the capabilities to manage a crisis of that scale. And going forward, many leaders are thinking about how they can do better going forward. So you could look at the agenda and think, well, yes, but that's probably the CEO board level agenda, and that is a perfectly logical picture of resilience. But actually what our clients and respondents are telling us is that the resilience agenda is not just at the top of the organization. It's something that should be embedded in everything. including the way they run their functions, the way they manage and deliver projects. And so you could argue that this is also something you could apply to, say, a project. When you look at a set of outcomes you're trying to achieve, what are the risks? Am I likely to face a dispute? Is there going to be a regulatory angle to this project? Have I thought about the economic impact and the sustainable side of things? How am I delivering this with my team? Are these people kind of organized to deliver in a way that makes sense in today's world? Are we using data to make decisions? How will I know if something has changed? Am I still answering the right questions? What are the financial implications, etc., etc. So it's a model that's very much applicable, not just at the top, but also at the organizational level and a project level. So I'd like to give you an example of India. So India is one of the G20 countries. So we've got some data on India. I thought it'd be interesting to give you kind of a contrast between India and the G20 results. So we looked at the vaccine question, and as you can see, responses in India are higher than the G20. So over 60% of Indian businesses think that they will survive less than a year if no vaccine is developed, which is a very worrying stat. And 95% of those businesses believe that their business model, again, must change fundamentally as a result of the pandemic. This is often around kind of digitization, but there is also kind of a supply chain angle and kind of an angle around talent and key skills. So what this tells me is that we need to increase resilience. We need to think about the short, the medium, and the long term, protect, adapt, compete. And there's really an opportunity for change makers to step in and help with that transition. So let's go deeper into the India results then. So if you look at the G20 average, which is to your right, and India to your left, firms unable to ramp up from a digital perspective. Now that's at 60% in the G20, which is already quite significant. It's 83% in India. Each and every one of you on this call has the opportunity to step in and help with that really strategic imperative. It's a strategic imperative for companies, for industries, and it will only strengthen the kind of the economy of the country and the subcontinent as a whole. Firms with less productive workforce since the pandemic started, it's 71% in the G20, it's 84% in India. And then cyber attacks, again, 32% across the G20, it's 55% in India. So I think that gives you a sense of the kind of the risks and the level of preparedness in that country, which I would love to discuss at the end of the presentation. So what can we do about it then? There are some significant risks out there. The good news is we have the data. We can track those risks. We can monitor them. We can anticipate changes. And we know that for each of the 7 resilience levers, which I've just shown you, there is kind of a data set that can help predict what happens next. So we are creating a model where you can become more agile by using these kind of future indicators to understand where some of the challenges might come in. And we can do crisis scenarios to challenge some of these assumptions. I think what would be really interesting is for us to have a discussion after this call around, well, what kind of data would be helpful to you? Are you already using data to make decisions? If so, is it working? Are you able to prepare for the next wave of risks? Are you thinking about resilience in your role every day? And as you push the limits of how we think about resilience and data, have you started developing analytical models that can help you become change makers in your organizations, in your ecosystems? I would love to hear examples and stories from the group after this presentation. And then the last point on resilience and kind of having data to predict the future is a point around accountability. We don't have all the answers, of course, and I don't think anyone can predict the future just yet, because the future hasn't happened, and it's really up to us to decide what that future should look like. And going back to the concept of being change makers and making resilience happen, the projects you're working on right now, the decisions you are making, the models you are building, the outcomes you are delivering, all of that is going to change what the future looks like. And so my challenge to everyone on this group is, well, what role will you play? How will you be a change maker? How will you create a business, an industry, a society, an economy that is more resilient? And so, having kind of presented you these kind of facts, I hope we can have a conversation. I'd love to hear how you are or plan to rebuild resilience in your ecosystems and markets. Thank you.